Young Preston, they called him. They didn't seem to believe the fake name he had given, but they used it anyway. Young was his real name, of the Preston dynasty. They called themselves the Engineer and the Alchemist, but called each other Erin and Aaron, or sometimes cousin. Their true relationship was more distant than that, but they were both of the Hinnerdale family. They hadn't asked where he had come from, and seemed to know more than he did about how he had appeared on the floor of their laboratory. Young didn't care where he was. I doubt he cared how he'd come to be there. He was just glad to no longer be where he had been for all 11 years of his life so far. Glad he was alive. He would be young Preston now. After the introductions, and some misapprehensions about his gender, they had examined Preston closely for a few minutes, poking and prodding the young boy, darting around their laboratory as they made notes and babbled to each other, over each other, with each other. He'd need to be powerful to have intercepted the throne, unless he was already between. Of course, Aaron, if he was coming from near our target, but how would they even know if this was even intentional? So if he was accidentally to get away from... Precisely, Aaron, look at the boy, the robes, the sword, the wounds. Jan would be fascinated. I'm fascinated myself. It is rather fascinating. He was wounded, Young realised. Touching his face, he let hallomancy flow through his open palm and into the cut. The flesh knitted back together before Young moved on to the next injury, as he looked around. The room was not small, but workspaces and equipment cramped most of it. Young recognised some of the alchemist's equipment. He'd read a little on chemistry. He could only guess that the stations being prodded by the engineer were Teniran computational devices, similar to what you and I would call computers. He'd read a little about these too. He'd read a little about many things. As for the two men that were with him, Young had trouble figuring out which name belonged to which at first. Both had similar features. Tall men with slim frames and faces, high cheeks and slender but pointed noses. That said, there were still enough differences to at least tell them apart. One seemed older than the other, his dark hair thinning on top and his forehead beginning to show wrinkles of age and worry, or perhaps deep thought. Both had lines around the corners of their eyes showing joy in their life. The younger-looking man was slightly taller, with thick hair cut short and long ears protruding through. He seemed younger, but elves always seemed young. It was clear that they were related, but less closely than they appeared at a glance. They had told him they were distant cousins, but Young understood that it must be very distant for the elven blood to be so diluted in one, but not at all in the other. Young had lost track of the jabbering conversation long before they brought him into it. "Well, young Preston? I could show you around while Aaron works, or Aaron could send you back once I get this working." He didn't reply, but he stood to let them do whichever they wished. My headset cut out for a second there. He stood to let them do whichever they wished. I don't think he would have known how to choose for himself, but the engineer and the alchemist were sure he understood. There was no real choice to make. The house wasn't large. The man with elven ears, Young could now deduce that this was Aaron, took him up the stairs from the basement lab to a room less than half its size. While the lab had spotless white tiles and gleaming metal, the rooms upstairs were darkly decorated, as if to hide the lack of regular cleaning. Even the grey wallpaper was peeling at the edges. A cramped kitchen blended into a breakfast counter. Then across it was a living space, brown tiles giving way to scratchy green carpet. 2 blue armchairs faced a device Young barely recognised as a television. He had seen them in books on Teniran technology, but the ones in the pictures had always been bulky boxes, not flat against the wall. Such devices, as he understood it, would only work in the world of Tenera, powered by a technology they kept to themselves. It was becoming clear to Young that he had left the frozen world of Mardros entirely. Of the 4 doors in this room, one had taken him from the laboratory, and the second was left unexplained. The third was covered in gears and wires that I couldn't begin to describe in detail, and Aaron instructed young Preston to never use this door without first asking Aaron where it would lead today. Young confirmed that he understood the instruction, though he didn't know why, and Aaron took him through the last door, which led to a staircase. The hallway in the upper floor was narrow, leading to a doorway at the end, but it was the doors along the sides that Young was shown, opening each to reveal the room inside. Aaron started with his own bedroom, first on the left. Aaron's was first on the right. Second on the right was a simple bathroom with toilet, sink and shower. No bath, but Aaron still called it a bathroom. The last room, second on the left, was referred to as the guest room. "Yours for as long as you are staying," Aaron told him. "But first I suspect you'd like to wash up. Seems you've had a long day." Aaron's hand on his shoulder made it seem like a kindly suggestion, or at least it would have to me, but the concept of a suggestion was foreign to Young. So was the shower. Nervously, he entered the room and stared at the device. Back in Mardros, one of the house servants would simply show him to the bathtub, already filled for him. Well, Prestel Young's father had called them servants. High Prestel Dracos didn't like the word slave. Young had read about plumbing, common to Nitmar and Tenera, and understood how pressure made the water flow through the pipes to the shower head, where it would spray out like a warm rain. His understanding of the workings of a shower was probably better than my own, but that did not mean he would know how to use it. Aaron showed him the dial to adjust temperature and the button to start and stop the water, and left Young to wash. The bed in his room was not like anything Young had slept on before. The mattress was thick and somehow soft yet firm. Not at all like the thin cloth mattresses of Mardros, but also not how he would imagine the bound straw mattresses of Briffin or the feather beds of Nitmaran nobility. With Teneran technology around, Young surmised that this was most likely a spring mattress, but even then it had a soft, foamy layer on top that seemed to adapt to his shape. The blankets were thin, but 2 of the 4 that had been left for him were plenty. The room was warmer than anywhere back in Mardros. He understood that it should feel more comfortable than what he was used to, and in a way it did, but it was still difficult to sleep in his unfamiliar surroundings. He woke up more than a few times during the night, before sunshine came streaming between the curtains. Even then he did not open them and look out. I doubt he would have unless he'd been given permission.